Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. All right, so today we're going to wrap up the Civil Rights Movement unit and pay particular attention to the rise of radical African American activism, Black Panthers, Black Power, Malcolm X, among others. And that'll wrap up this particular unit. The remaining time that we're going to be having in future days is going to focus on politics. So I'll give you that material later. And of course, as always, take very careful notes and follow all the material, all the videos, everything. The essay assessment is going to be coming from all of that. So, yeah. So let's get right to it. Okay, there we go. We've got a variety of different things that we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to ask you at different times to pause on this particular video and then click on another YouTube video. I've had a devil of a time sometimes with YouTube. I'll include something in some video and then it'll be like copyright, and I'm like, oh. So what I'm doing is I'll be pausing, you can see, and I know those videos are there on YouTube. So you just pause this, click on the next one, and then you can see that excerpt. Some of them were pretty short. A lot of them are, although there's some very, very good ones. There's a really, really good one comparing Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. So that's going to be coming up as well. So yeah, let's get started. So we got a variety of different civil rights movements, radical African American activism. So this is outside Martin Luther King Jr.'s activism and the SCLC and SNCC and CORE and NAACP. This has got a different take on it, okay? We got a different take. There's some similarities, there's some differences here, and these folks that we're going to be talking about definitely do have an influence on kind of the way things are going to play out actually all the way up until the present, as far as different voices, different leaders, different messages, different kind of take within African American groups as they face some issues that have been around before the Civil Rights Movement and still, but also some new issues. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the Black Panthers, okay? And this is a group that was founded by Huey Newton, right here, and Bobby Seale, right here, okay, in Oakland, California. You can already get a little bit of a sense of a different look. I mean, sometimes a picture tells a story, right? If you have do a counterpose with Martin Luther King Jr. over here, he wouldn't have the hat, I mean, the beret and so forth, but what else, okay? Maybe not the jacket. Martin Luther King Jr. probably dressed up in, like, you know, a pastor's outfit, you know, a suit and tie and so forth. And Martin Luther King Jr. wouldn't be carrying guns. Now, can people carry guns in this country? Second Amendment, you got a right to carry guns. And these guys are carrying guns because that is kind of part of their message. Militant self-defense, all right? Militant self-defense. Do not like being pushed around. They don't like that thing that happens, you know, when Martin Luther King Jr. and others following that peaceful, nonviolent approach, getting arrested, getting pushed around. Now, of course, we know, you know, they paid a heavy price, and of course, part of that reason is to get others in the country to, like, you know, say, wow, that's really terrible. They're being treated so bad, and let's change some laws and so forth. They must really care about their views. Well, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale don't necessarily like getting thrown in jail and getting pushed around and so forth. They, as American citizens, are saying, you know, we're going to organize and we're not going to get pushed around. And of course, you potentially are going to see some greater confrontation. In fact, don't be surprised. There is some greater confrontations going to be popping up during this, with respect to this group. Some of the key things focusing on there. This is the focusing on massive organization, revolutionary socialism. So this is, you know, this is going to be left of, you know, kind of where Martin Luther King Jr. and his civil rights movement wants to go. FBI director J. Edgar Hoover is like, these guys are a threat right? They're a threat. Well, what is the threat? Is the threat the things they're complaining about? Because they're complaining about racism. They're complaining about economic exploitation. Black Panthers are in opposition to the draft. Well, hello, Martin Luther King Jr. was also in opposition to the draft and the Vietnam War and so forth. But the thing that gets Hoover concerned is that these guys are organizing and carrying weapons. Now, Hoover's not upset that these guys are offering free breakfast for kids and health clinics and so forth to African American neighborhoods and the Oakland area and so forth. But you know, the militancy, the having the guns and so forth, is going to get the attention of Hoover. It's like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to, like, you know, attack law enforcement and so forth? Yeah, there was a particular incident with the Oakland police on April 7th, 1968. There was a shootout at the Black Panthers headquarters there. It's an interesting thing. A police officer was killed. Was it an ambush? Who was ambushing who? Was the ambush of the Black Panthers to the police, or was the police ambush? I mean, there was a lot of tension, a lot of recrimination, and there were some trials, all right? And in fact, ultimately, both Huey Newton and Bobby Seale were put in prison. I mean, let me see, Newton got out of prison in 1970, Bobby Seale got out of prison until 1972. The Black Panthers will see their peak in 1970. That is the peak of the Black Panther movement. 60 offices in 68 different cities around the country. Large membership. The peak of the membership is 1970. By the time you get to 1980, there's only 27 members. Things are really falling off by that time period. Now there's a new Black Panthers movement, different thing, taking the ideas and so forth behind that. But yeah, interesting tone here. Yeah, okay. I've got a couple of things. This is just kind of silly, right? Okay, I've got a Forrest Gump clip. Pause right here, play the goofy Forrest Gump clip, because there's a little bit of like a cultural connection where Forrest Gump, this fictional character, it goes to the Washington, D.C., and he finds Jenny, right? Gives a speech, and of course Forrest Gump is a Vietnam War veteran, the fake Forrest Gump and so forth, gives a speech, but we don't know what the speech says because somebody pulled a microphone. And then they're hanging out, and they go to where Jenny's with some of her friends in the Black Panther movement. So you have a little scene there with the Black Panther movement, right? Okay, so watch that. Got it? Okay. Okay. Now you're back. Okay, now you're back, right? So this makes some context. Sorry, I ruined your Super Bowl Panther party. So Carolina Panthers. Okay, do I have to explain to me? Carolina Panthers played the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Bronco quarterback was Peyton Manning, and he looks a little bit like Forrest Gump. It's a Super Bowl name. Okay, all right. Should we move on? Okay, all right, let's move on. Now to Black Power. Okay, let's talk about Black Power. All right, key character we're going to be referring to, the key leader in the Black Power movement, is Stokely Carmichael. And Stokely Carmichael, you've actually run across him before in the Eyes on the Prize series. He started out his involvement, civil rights movement, in the auspices, I believe it was with SNCC, and he was arrested many, many times. In fact, he said, I got arrested way too many times. I think he said he got like arrested 27 times. So he was an active member of SNCC. And but eventually he's just like, I'm just getting kind of tired of this. He gets rid of his last name, Carmichael. And it's very interesting because within the African-American community, a lot of last names of people were their master's names, right? The owners gave the first and last names, but certainly the last names. And so in the 1960s, beginning in the 1960s, you started seeing a number of African Americans getting rid of the last name Malcolm X, right? He was originally Malcolm Little, okay? Cassius Clay, great boxer, right? Olympic winning boxer, is like, forget that Cassius Clay thing. I mean, he gets rid of the first part and the last part. And he becomes, let me see, becomes Islamic, and he takes on the name Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Anyway, and so Stokely Carmichael takes on the name, I believe it's pronounced Kwame Ture. I might be wrong with that, sorry. And takes a different tack here, right? Not necessarily going to be picking up weapons and so forth, but he's saying, look, I am tired of the whites whooping us. What we're going to start saying now, we're going to take pride in our African Americanness. We're going to take pride in our blackness. I mean, think back to the unit we had before when I showed you the story surrounding the case Brown versus Board of Education. Remember the sociological story, the research with the dolls, right? Where the researcher, the sociologist, was proving that African American kids were like getting this message that black is not beautiful, and they were preferring the white dolls. Remember that? Right. So here in the '60s, you have a Black Power movement. Black is beautiful. Styles, putting more Africanness, taking on African names, African clothing, building up a unique but tied into African culture and identity that stands out from what had come before it. Okay, so moving away from some of that. Definitely intentional, definitely intentional. So it's very interesting. Let me see what else I want to say here. Yeah. Yeah, Black Power. Black Power. And you see that. The hand, the fist up in the air, Black Power, right? I want you to watch, pause here in a moment and watch. I've got a clip. Stokely Carmichael, that time Kwame Ture, giving a speech, very short segment of the speech, in which he explains his views, what is the key component parts of the Black Power movement, trying to get civil rights accomplished without necessarily doing some of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. does that I guess strikes some of these folks as being too much of a pushover. Although I don't know. King was definitely in your face, but these guys are definitely in your face too. All right, so pause right here. Check out the speech and then come back. Okay, you back? All right. There were a number of people, African Americans, that follow this Black Power movement, and included among them are Tommie Smith and John Carlos. Okay, and you can tell by the picture there, they are they've got Olympic medals, gold medal and bronze medal. In the 1968 Mexico City Olympic Games, they won it in the 200 meter race, and when receiving the gold medal and the bronze medal, Tommie Smith, with their arms up in the air, as a significance of saying that they are in belief and in recognition and in solidarity with the Black Power movement. They didn't like how African Americans were being treated in the United States of America, so they used this stage to make a political protest. And as you'll see in the video clip that I have also attached here, I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to be hitting pause, and you're going to be back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Sorry, it's just worth it. It's a good story. This one's about, what, 4 or 5 minutes. And it tells a story because the United States Olympic Committee wasn't too excited about that, nor the International Olympic Committee wasn't too excited about athletes using the Olympic Games, a big stage, to make political, cultural, sociological points. And so they were sent home by the United States Olympic Committee. They were sent home. And in the years since then, it's been very interesting, the kind of debates that go around, is athletics separate from what is going on in the world? What happens when athletes get involved in this? And how do you feel about that? In any event, these men were like, we're going to say what we're going to say. All right. The fellow right down here was like, that's cool. He's from Australia. He got the silver. Pierre Norman, I think he was his name. And you'll hear about him as well. Okay. So pause, watch that video clip, and then come back. All right. You guys back? All right. Now, let's turn our attention to Black supremacy. And this is an interesting one. This is an interesting take on this here. We got two men here in this picture. You've got on the left, Elijah Muhammad, who was the leader of the Nation of Islam. And then you got Malcolm X, right, who was going to join that movement, the Nation of Islam, and ultimately become better known than, perhaps, and have quite a following, than the original man in charge of the movement, Elijah Muhammad. And in fact, as I tell you, they're ultimately going to have a little bit of a falling out. Malcolm X is going to go, you know, on second thought, I don't completely agree with everything that's going on here. So let's back it up a little bit. Malcolm X, actually born Malcolm Little, right, 1925. And as I've got the movie trailer, Spike Lee's movie with Denzel Washington, who looks a lot like Malcolm X. Denzel Washington playing the title role. You can see, because movie trailers tell you everything in like 2 minutes. He starts out, you know, early life involved in Harlem, in New York City, involved in drug pushing and crime and so on. He gets busted, sent to prison, and while in prison, becomes a convert to Islam and joins the Nation of Islam, right, which was founded by and led by Elijah Muhammad. And so he changed his name to Malcolm X, X signifying the, you know, lost name of his African heritage, and focuses on Black supremacy. That what is African American, what is Islam, for that matter, is better than what else is out there in the United States culture, and in particular, the aspects of white or European-based culture. And the teaching is to separate, right? That the African cultural ideas and way is supreme, and to separate from the whites, right? Them go do their thing and so forth. Right? We're not going to have anything to do with you guys. There's a toughness, there's a resoluteness there, and so forth. And it's like, yeah, we are the Nation of Islam, we were the Black nation, and white just go bye-bye. So it's a very, very different kind of a take as compared to, say, Martin Luther King Jr., who was trying to get changes within the American culture so that African Americans and whites and so forth could all be equal, right? That no one would judge you by the color of your skin and so forth, that we could have this equality and so forth. But there's that separation element there. Malcolm X is a very effective leader within that community, gets a lot of attention, very well spoken. You're going to find it very, very interesting. And you really do need to watch this. It's about 8 minutes, and I've got it. I've got the link for you there as well. And that is a juxtaposition of Malcolm X's speaking. You're going to hear from him, as well as Martin Luther King Jr. You're going to hear from him, and it's a different take. Now, fascinating thing is, because the first thing you're going to hear from Malcolm X is very critical. I mean, he's like calling Martin Luther King Jr. like an Uncle Tom. Like, you're just going along with whites, and yes, and it's just like, oh, wow. And there was quite a bit of tension early on in the 60s between them. But Malcolm X tended to change a little bit as things went on. He wasn't as critical of King later on as you got to the mid 60s. In fact, he started to think, you know what, I'm not going to be going for this Black supremacy thing. I'm cool with focusing on Black self-determination. What is good about being an African American? We don't have to like judge and say Mars is better than yours and so forth. Let's focus on self-determination, self-defense. Okay, so self-defense is going to be a key part of it as well. So it's interesting because Malcolm X is the follower who ends up becoming, in some measures, greater than, at least more well-known than the original leader. And they're going to go their separate ways. And in 1965, interesting answer to the question, is that cool with the Nation of Islam's Elijah Muhammad or the people who follow him? Is that cool that Malcolm X is going and doing his thing and being his leader and doing his thing? Well, apparently, there were 3 members of the Nation of Islam that weren't too cool about it. And when Malcolm X was giving a speech on February 21st, 1965, they came barging into the room with guns blazing and assassinated Malcolm X. February 21st, 1965. and it's over. All right. So it's got a different take on it. You do want to hear from, I think these gentlemen can speak better from their perspective of where things are, and I think you get quite a bit more from that. First, I'm going to play you the trailer for Malcolm X, the film by Spike Lee, and then we'll direct you to watch the video with King and Malcolm X, in their own words. And that'll actually pretty much wrap it up. So let's go ahead and get right to, there we go. Denzel Washington, very good actor.
Do you know where you came from? What's your name?
Malcolm Little.
No, that's the name of the slave masters who own your family. You don't even know who you are. Who are you?
Say Roseland. Roseland.
He was a pusher, a hustler, a thief.
You ready to tackle the streets? Yeah, I'm ready. Let them come.
He was loved, respected, convicted.
State your number, Little. I forgot it.
In a dream that's divine.
He was a prisoner who set himself free.
A Muslim must be strikingly upright. I will not touch the white man's drugs, his liquor, his women, so that those in the darkness can see the power of the light. I will not lie, cheat, or steal.
I believe you will remain faithful. Yes.
He was a follower who became a leader.
You're not an American. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
He brought honor to disobedience.
I suggest you look outside that window.
You've been laying down and bowing down for 400 years. I think it's time to stand up.
All right, break it up. You got what you wanted.
No, I'm not satisfied.
That's too much power for one man to have.
And a voice to a people who longed to be heard.
You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray.
You're saying you're anti-white.
No, you're saying I'm anti-white.
I'm sorry, Betty. I haven't been the best husband.
I love you.
Do you advocate violence?
No, sir.
Academy Award winner Denzel Washington's most electrifying performance. Director Spike Lee's most powerful film.
Malcolm, can we all live together?
I sincerely hope so.
Well, that didn't leave any doubt as to how that story is going to be ending. All right, that's going to be pretty much wrapping it up for me. Definitely watch that last video between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. This has been an intense unit. Make sure if you missed any of the pieces and so forth, go back through there. Everyone needs to be very, very cognizant of what's going on in the civil rights movement and have notes on all these different component parts so that you'll be ready for your assessment that's going to be coming up. Next time we'll get started on an abbreviated, somewhat abbreviated unit on politics. And oh my gosh, yeah, we'll be talking about the politics of the United States of America, but also in the context of what is going on in our current situation. So that's coming up. You guys stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you guys later.